Aye, kuwe kuamadue.
Aye, kuwe kuamadue.
Aye, kuwe kuamadue.
Aye, kuwe kuamadue.
Could you please introduce yourself?
Arnold Xavier Cornelius Perkins, and I come from a tradition where your godparents give you names. So Arnold is after my father, and so is Perkins. Xavier is one godparent, and Cornelius is another godparent. So I'm the son of Arnold and Jessie Perkins.
Excellent. Well, we're so happy to have you today. And we just want to ask you some questions about your life and your history. This is the Oral History Project.
Sure.
Yep. So let's begin. Let's start with, where did you grow up?
Three places. Miami, Florida is where I was born. We spent some time in New Jersey, but came to California in 1954 when I was 12, almost 13, and have, grew up essentially in the Bay Area, Berkeley in particular.
Interesting. Okay. And what part of New Jersey?
Newark. We were in Newark, where Father Divine, who's a historic black preacher, he had this table that had seated hundreds of people, and that's in my early memory. But Newark was an interesting place, so it wasn't a long, maybe a year in Newark, but the rest has been here in California.
What was it like growing up in California?
It was interesting because when I first came to California in '54, I'll give you an example of the subtle racism. When I first came to California in '54, we went to Reno, we were in Harrah's, and we were inside, and they told us we had to leave. And that was a remnant of what was happening in California, in Berkeley, where across University Avenue, those who know Berkeley, University Avenue, on the south side of University Avenue, we could be as African people. But on the north side, if you were on the north side at the wrong time of day, you might have the police called on you because this is not where you are supposed to be. So it was, racism was, in the South it was clear. No niggers, no Jews, no dogs, and then it was no niggas, no dogs, when the Jews bought up everything. So the racism in the South was really clear. Out here it was very subtle. So that was part of my experience growing up in Berkeley. At the same time, I had a rich experience in Berkeley and in California.
Interesting. And who or what would you say influenced you the most as a child?
Probably my father. I'm not a mother's boy, I'm a father's boy. So I really, my father was just an amazing man. He could fix anything. I mean, just incredible. And the irony is, he used to take me on Sundays. We lived in Miami to Pompano Beach, and I tried not to learn anything because I hated going, and I could just kick myself now. So people make a lot of money off of me fixing stuff. Fortunately, my sons are like my father, but my father's a painter. I have pictures in my office at home of paintings that he's done, and he's a craftsman. He did metal crafts, anything with your hands he could do, and he had a third grade education, but he was one of the smartest people that I ever have known. Just a solid person, yeah.
And just having that sense with your father and seeing him being able to build things, being able to do so many things with your hands. As you mentioned, when you were in Miami and other places, you didn't necessarily learn too much, but was there a point, I guess, in your life, even as a child, where you picked up some certain skills from him, even if it wasn't maybe being a handyman or something like that?
I think social skills. I'm relatively comfortable in social I'm comfortable in social situations because I know there's a separation between me and somebody else. Probably the best example is when I have to do an MRI and you're in a small tube, I know the difference between the tube and me, so it doesn't freak me out. I mean, I could actually go to sleep. And so I think he taught me a couple of things. One thing is that I'm a part of a bigger community. There's no I, it's we. And so, and when I came to California, it's so interesting. The first time I understood, still understand it, the notion of I. Growing up, my father and his friends built a number of houses, and so on Sunday and during the evenings they would get together. They'd drill wells with a pipe, with a piece of wood on top with a sledgehammer, and they'd hit the hammer and someone would turn the pipe, hit the hammer, turn the pipe. And then we'd always have these really nice lunches that the ladies and mothers would, prepare. When I knew Cyril Higgs, who was a ship's captain, a brother who sailed from Panama to like Miami. I knew principals of school. I was actually born in a school. My father was a head custodian at Dorsey High School, a historical school in Miami. And I was born at the top of the school because as a head custodian, you are able to live there. So I was born in a school. So I actually grew up as a little kid running around the school until I was 5.
Oh, wow.
So it was, so my father has taught me just a number of things about how to be. He had a lot of sayings. One is, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And then he said, don't make a mountain out of a molehill. He said, a molehill you could step over, a mountain you have to climb. And if you put stuff off, it becomes a mountain. But if you deal with it right, then it's a molehill. And he had other sayings, but he was just very influential he is very influential in my life. So I'm an ancestor believer. I believe in my ancestor. Yeah, I don't want to get too far into this. I know my ancestors because I've experienced them. Other things I don't know. So if I'm struggling with something, the question I ask myself is what my father would say. What would my ancestors say about this? Would they be proud that I'm doing this, or would they frown that I'm doing it? And so these are kind of guides that I grew up with. I grew up with roots. I used to wear an asphyxis bag around my neck growing up to like ward off spirits. I have something that I carry with me in my back pocket to ward off spirits. So I'm just a very spiritual person. But anyway, I just picked this up from growing up in Miami, Florida with a West Indian community and the belief system that I still carry.
That's interesting. And were you, at the time, was it like a church situation as well, or is it just mostly spirituality as you were growing up when you said you picked
It was church. The reason we came to California was because I came from a Seventh-day Adventist family, and we came out here to the World General Conference. But I just, the thing that I could never understand is, there's a saying that says God is love. I could never understand someone who's gonna burn you up in hell. That just never made sense to me, girl. I just never, I have 4 sons. I couldn't imagine burning them. I just can't imagine. I mean, I'd be perverse if I tried to burn them up. And so that never worked for me. And so when I was going to Merritt College, I had this class on world religion. And I realized that there were more religions than I was taught to believe, because I was taught that Catholics were heathens and because they worship idols and all of that. And so it just opened my eyes to realize that I'm more of a spiritual person than I'm a religious person. I'm just not, I believe that we have to seek personal and collective enlightenment. And we get enlightenment from others and what you can learn from other people, what other people teach you. So, yeah, I'm not religious. But I don't doubt anyone who believes. I just ask you to believe in what you believe in. If you believe in Jesus and practice Jesus. You believe in Buddha, practice Buddhism. But religion is a huge business. It's just a huge, one of the biggest businesses in the world. And so I honor it, but it's not who I am.
I hear that. And in your travels and places that you've gone, I'm sure you got to experience different religions and spirituality and that. How did that shape some of your worldviews?
I guess when I've traveled throughout the world, it's the obedience to what people believed. I mean, there are a lot of true believers in whatever. In Zimbabwe, Mutoko, there's this holy mountain. And you could see Zimbabweans all dressed in white going up the mountains at night. It's once or twice a year carrying candles, and these are true believers. And it's a pretty tall mountain that they go up, and they have I guess there must be a combination of Catholic and something else, because there's the 12 stations, I think, of the cross, or 12 stations.
Right.
But so I've seen people who really believe and really have faith, and I admire them. And just seeing, going to Italy and seeing the huge edifices. I mean, just huge. And the notion of those cathedrals to make you feel small, and the money and energy that's going into building those. And a lot of people build them out of the belief that this will get them to heaven or wherever. And I've seen Buddhists who have sat someplace, meditating for hours, and so I'm inspired by all of that. I don't necessarily have to follow something, to be inspired by the concept of what it stands for. So it's my travels have shown me different ways of experiencing the world.
Very interesting. And just given those experiences, I'm curious, coming back to, say, the U.S. after you've done some of these travels, what would you say being black in America, what does that mean to you?
Pride. That's the first word that comes to mind. So I'm an African in America, and I'm real clear on that. It's so interesting that people that I know from Africa, they say I'm Igbo or I'm Hausa, I'm Fulante, I'm Shona, Intabelli. And so they don't call themselves African, they don't call themselves black, they call themselves, what they are. And so I refer to myself as being African. I'm just an African that was born in, this country. So I'm not sure what black is. I mean, in terms of the context of lumping us all together, I'm pretty sure what African is. And so my wife is Japanese. We've been together 45 years. She calls us, she didn't say I'm a yellow person. She said I'm Japanese. I've never heard her say, well, I'm yellow. Native American friends, they don't call themselves red. I'm red. They say I'm Sioux, or I'm Blackfoot, or I'm whatever. And so, that blackness I love, but calling us as a people not who we are makes me uncomfortable. I'm an African man that was born in America. Excuse me.
I hear that. Well, let me rephrase that.
Sure.
What does being African in America mean to you?
Again, pride. The history that we come from, the original people came from Africa. And so the original medicine, mathematics, and all that came from Africans. I'm very proud of that. So I'm proud to be an African person. When I go to Africa and see the historical things that we've done, the pyramids. I mean, the pyramids are awesome. I mean, just awesome. You know, my brothers and sisters that lived around Victoria Falls, you know, and the beauty that they experience, or living in the Congo, you know, all the animals around, you know, the gorillas in the Congo. I mean, and you're able to see that and live in harmony, you know. And I'm very proud that the largest number of educated people are in Africa as a continent, not China, not USA. The model student are African students. And so I'm very proud of that. Most people don't know it, we don't talk about it. We see ourselves in context of white people, you know, which is a huge mistake. You know, I'm not in context with white people. That's not my model. I don't feel inferior to them, you know. They're just another people. And I'm more interested in who we are as a people. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm just a proud African.
I hear that. What are some lessons that you've learned about African American society, and as you've had these travels and then come back and just experience, as you mentioned earlier, growing up in Berkeley and just the difference in terms of subtle racism versus it being overt? What are some lessons you've learned?
Well, one lesson is that we are a resilient people, that no one came to this country the way we came, stacked 18 inches, and many of us died as a result of the disease, jumped overboard, but we are the survival of the fittest. I think we're the fittest people in this country, and that's not saying anything against other people, because I know Cambodians have a hell of a time coming over. The Hmong, you know, have a hell of a time coming over. Latinos traveling, who are migrating. Latinos are not immigrants, they're migrants. They're migrating from the Americas. They've always migrated, and we just have these stupid rules. But anyway. I don't know, the lessons I've learned is that we're the best of the best, you know, that we are very creative, we're trendsetters, you know, we are those of us who are, my colleagues are well educated, because you know you have to live in this dual world. Du Bois talked about the duality, the two-ness. And so we're constantly interpreting what's going on in our environment. And so we have, you know, the ability to master a so-called dominant culture. You know, the principles are based upon Eurocentric thinkers and concepts, and we're able to like master that and, you know, do well. So I'll just go on and on and on and babble about it, but I just think that I've learned a lot from who we are as a people, you know, the strides that we've taken in spite of just horrible situations, you know, and we continue to rise, and will continue to rise. As I was saying, the first thing that came to mind is free your mind, your ass will follow. Liberation is just an interesting concept, because there are various types of liberations. There's personal liberation, and there's community liberation. I think that often many of us in our lives feel liberated. I personally feel liberated. I do. I love life. I just love it. I mean, and I have the liberty to do as I choose to do 99% of the time. But when I think about our community and the conditions that we live under, it's certainly not community liberation when you're sleeping in a tent. And I have a lot of brothers and sisters. I call them my unhoused relatives because I see them as my relatives because it could be me anytime. And so as a community, it's just difficult for for anybody in this country actually to be liberated because we're in an unstable country. This country is unstable. This would be the first country, it's not on your question, but it's a thought, this would be the first country where you have multiracial fascism. If you think about the brother who ran against Gavin Newsom, he believes the same thing white people believe. I saw the sister Claire something who was on C-SPAN who ran part of Trump's campaign. She believes and so that's fascist belief. And so I'm not sure who in this country is liberated. And I'm not sure what collective liberation might even look like. I mean, I was thinking about that earlier. I mean, what would liberation look like? Because, we'll still have poor people. We'll still have people who are struggling. And so is liberation an individual thing that's periodic, or is liberation a constant? And so I would love to see all of us have the freedom in our minds to do the things that we choose to do and not have limits, but also recognize that everyone has those limits. So if I think about Native Americans, they aren't liberated. I think about Asians, they aren't liberated. I think about white people, they're not liberated, And so I think liberation is maybe a temporary concept that you experience from time to time. I struggle with that. I struggle with that as for our people. Because sometimes we are in liberated situations and don't recognize it, And I think because I don't know if we have a clear definition or a clear meaning of what it is. So it might be more transient. So that's something I struggle with, that notion. I don't struggle with like being free. I don't struggle with that, but the notion of liberation.
Yeah, and to your point, it sounds like a lot of that deals with, because there's so many systemic issues at play that take away from what would be that liberation, particularly as you mentioned, your unhoused relatives, and, just being in so many, especially in this country, so many financial situations that prevent or at least try to impede a lot of that progress that you would especially see for one group of people or another, that just being a big issue around that. I'm curious what you would say would be like maybe the top 3 things that you feel have been most harmful, I guess, to our community that you've seen.
Most harmful.
Most harmful.
I think the lack of education. Education is really freedom. I mean, the more you understand about how things operate, the freer you are. I mean, and so I think education is one of the things. I think the self-hate in terms of violence we commit on each other is really harmful, because it's hard for me to shoot Spencer, but it's easy for me to shoot that nigga, because I depersonalize who you are. I just make you be something else, and so I think violence within our community is one of the major harmful things. I think the lack of economic viability, not being able to meet your basic needs, whether it's food, whether it's health care, excuse me. I think that those are some of the harmful things, within our community. And I hate the self-hate that we often have toward each other. I mean, the notion that niggas ain't shit. I just think, well, first of all, I don't know any niggas. That's just the first thing. Let me riff on that for a minute.
Go ahead, please.
So I think about roots, and I think about the one section that the white guy has this brother whipping Kunta Kinte, and he said, "What's your name?" "My name is Kunta Kinte." Beat him. "What's your name?" "My name is Kunta Kinte." Beat him. "My name is Kunta." Beat him. "Your name," and he kept saying, "Your name is Toby. Your name is Toby." And so he said, "No, Kunta Kinte." And so they beat him. He was all beat up, and he said, "What's your name?" And he said, "My name is Toby." So we call each other nigger, and we make it acceptable. And so we call ourselves desensitizing the word. To me, when you say nigger, that means something to me, because that's where I grew up in the South. People call you nigger. And that was a fighting word. And now we use it like it's nothing. You know, white people call us niggers, and that's cool. I mean, and so I just have a difficult time with us calling these, ourselves. And so we'll say, "A nigga ain't shit." So I'm gonna smoke him. I'm gonna blow him away. So anyway, I just think that language can be harmful within our community, because language have power. Words have power. Words have meaning. Like the word minority. I'm not a minority. I've never been a minority, never will be a minority, but we accept it. White supremacists, white people are not supreme. But there's these things just roll off of our tongues as if it's nothing, but we don't think about the words we use. So words are can be weaponized, or they can be loving.
Yeah. That certainly makes sense, and I'm sure you've also noted that too, in your journeys with spirituality and understanding the power of word. Regardless of what may be religious practice that that you follow. So that certainly tracks and makes sense in the same way, because that also feeds into self-hate that you're talking about.
And and speaking about the religious part, I think that the institution of the church is so powerful if used correctly. Mm-hmm. So instead of beating people up, beating people over the head about you're going to hell and all that, why don't you talk to them about let's start a food co-op. Let's start a giving circle. Let's start a business. But instead we spend time in our institutions talking about you going to hell. If you don't do so and so, and you're going to hell. And I just think there are missed opportunities, and we have very few theologians and a lot of preachers. We've got a lot of preachers, but I call them Bible thumpers. And I just think there are missed opportunities that we could deal with some of the harm within our community. If we were to have a conversation, what would happen if I know there's a church down the street here? What would happen if that church decided that for our Sunday service, I want everyone to come ready to sweep or paint? You go and you sweep this 4 blocks around your church. You come back and talk about the experience. As opposed to coming there, taking up an offering, talking about how sinful you are, and so and so and so. And so I think we have institutions that are, this is pejorative, but I'm saying anyway, that are misguided. That could be more helpful to deal with the harms that we have than they are. And also it would begin having us not be afraid of our children. We're afraid of our children now. We're afraid. I'm going to just riff a little bit more. So. I don't be going to jail right now, Brother Cole. You got
Yeah. Yeah, not even
I
sure what that
wonder
is.
if the alarm goes on automatically.
Hey, that's the first time we've heard it.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
please continue.
So we have institutional things that teach our kids wrong behavior. I give you examples. So I got a call about pepper spray and restraints on our kids at a juvenile hall. And I told the person, I said, first of all, it's a human right issue. That if I were to pepper spray or to hold my kid in restraints, I would be arrested. Yet and still, you legally break the law by having adults hold kids, pepper spray them, hold restraints. Now, people say, well, these kids are wild. I've worked with young people just about my whole life, and they are wild. So what happens if I have you locked down in the facility and I have all the other people go to their rooms and I just let you wild out, until you, because you are doing what you're doing, there's something going on inside of you. But the way I deal with it as an institution is I spray you or I hold you down, but I tell you not to do that in the community, because that's the behavior you've already learned in the community. If I'm on the block and I hang out, I'm going to intimidate somebody, because I'm going to take your lunch, I'm going to take your money, I'm going to take your dope, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because you're weak, you're a chump. And so we reinforce that by locking down our young people and then pepper spraying them. But yet and still, we as a community, we don't say nothing about it. Well, that kid, you got to handle them some way. How come other counties handle youngsters and they don't spray them, they don't, restrain them like that? And we do, and it's primarily black or African youngsters and Latino youngsters. So I mean, it's just it's things like that that the institutions we give the institutions permissions to abuse us, and we don't say anything about it. But I know that was a sad truth. That's been on my heart.
No, that's good, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually would like to speak a little bit more, hear more from you about your experiences helping young people, and that's been part of your career as well. So please expound on that. Just working in juvenile halls and things. What are some of the things that you've learned from just being in close proximity to quote unquote the wild children and that, and just how's that framed your sense? So
I'm on the Wards Advisory Board at San Quentin, have been probably 15 years, and so I get to see youngsters in juvenile hall, and I get to see them in our state prison system. Some of the brightest people I've ever met in my life are in those systems. They haven't had a venue that they could show their brightness in different ways. Felix Mitchell had a huge drug empire. He was a huge businessman, but he didn't have a vehicle to show that brilliance in other ways, because he was not introduced to that. I think that our young people are a tremendous resource. I think many of the young people who are in our juvenile system and our prison system have been young people who have been either physically or even worse, psychologically abused. I mean, you could be physically abused and healed, but the psychological abuse, the trauma of that stays with you your whole life, So I think our young people are a tremendous resource. I think that we spend money at two ends. We spend money on my children and children like my children, allow them to travel, to take courses. And we spend money at the other end. We might spend $200,000 on a youngster who's in trouble. But it's the middle It's where our brilliance really is, but we don't spend money there. You either have to be a middle-class family or you have to get in trouble to have resources. But in here, and so as long as our kids are doing okay, then we don't pay them any attention. But it's when they get into trouble that we want to pay them attention. But we also want to say, that's a bad kid. How did he get it and all that? Well, what they pick up is from us as adults. And then you also have, from the womb to the tomb, babies making babies, you know. And so I think that we have a responsibility to our young people to make sure that they have what they need to grow up in a healthy environment that is nurturing, environment that cares. I think we need to expose them to different things. One of the dreams that I had for a long time was being able to take some young brothers over to Africa. So we're able to take 13 youngsters over to Africa in 2018 or 19 to South Africa.
Wow.
To just give them the experience and have them understand that MacArthur and Broadway, I will kill you for MacArthur and Broadway because I think that's all I got. But once I realized all this is mine, this whole world is mine. You know, whether I'm in India or Africa or England or where, this is all mine. And so having a sense that the world is bigger than your block, I think we owe that to our youngsters. I think that we have to train our youngsters, not let them grow up, because a lot of our youngsters grow up with their peers, and their peers encourage them to be who they are. And I think we as adults have to be responsible for our young people and be proactive in providing an environment for them that helps them grow. I garden a lot. And I know when I first moved to where I live, my soil was clay, it was thick, it was hard, and the little plants I grow would be just so big. Over the years, that big plant is now this big because I worked the soil. Our young people are the very same way. They're fertile. And if we provide the right nutrients to them, the right opportunities to grow, they will grow. But because we're afraid of them, because I'm not fooling with him, then our youngsters struggle, you know, they suffer. And then we point fingers at them as if they're from another planet. So, that's what goes on in my mind. And I'm also proud of our youngsters. I'm proud of the folk that I'm sitting before. I mean, very, very proud, you know. And I know the majority of our young people are really moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
But as I said, the ones we focus on are the ones who are struggling, and they might be struggling for various reasons. So anyway, out of the mud grows a lotus.
Out of the mud grows a lotus. From you giving an example about the gardening and having, you know, really planting those seeds and giving the right nutrients, how have some of those lessons influenced you as a father?
Oh, wow. A lot. I have 4 sons, and they're all doing well. And that's part of it is because we as parents paid attention to them. Right now, we have a phone call every Sunday at 10 o'clock, and we've had it since March 2020 as a result of COVID. We started the phone calls out by having the oldest and the youngest choose a record. So I'm the oldest, so I chose Miles Davis' Kind of Blue album. And my grandson chose Kendrick Lamar, something about a butterfly.
To Pimp a Butterfly.
What?
To Pimp a Butterfly.
To Pimp a Butterfly.
Yep.
And then we moved. My wife was the next oldest, and then so we went through that as well as check-in. We then progressed any statements that touched you that week, the oldest and youngest did, and now we just have a conversation. And so tomorrow at 10 o'clock, I look forward to the conversation that ranged from Europe to the East Coast to the Midwest to here. And so I can see the influence that I've had on them and the influence that they have had on me. And so fatherhood for me means being there for them, being truthful with them, being open with them, because the grandchildren are invited to ask a question about anything that they want to ask. It could be about anything. And our responsibility is to answer those questions so the next generation is open and honest. And so parenting is a practice. You know, if you practice providing for your children, either educationally, health-wise, intellectually, they will do fine. Now, is there some kids, I know kids who've come from a great family, and not that all families aren't great on some level or not, but I just use that. And they decided to do something different. I mean, I got a buddy now who's out, who was a lifer, and he came from a solid family, but he just chose he's going to do something different. You know, I mean, I'm going to be a thug, you know, because I didn't like my situation. I just want to be a thug, and so he thugged, and he was one of the founders. I forget the Bloods or the Crips, but you know, he's just so. I've always felt, for me, parenting is important. It's one of the most important things that I could do is to be a good parent, where your children feel proud to have you as their parent. You know, that's my dad. Oh no, I don't know. He don't come around. No, it's one of the great things in my life. Is to have a family. Family is the most important thing to me.
I hear that. And speaking of family, I wanted to segue into talking about the Brotherhood of Elders Network. And please just enlighten us, how did that come to be about, the work that you've done in terms of putting that together? We'd just like to hear from you about that.
I didn't put it together. We put it together collectively. We're still putting it together, but so I used to walk around the lake with Woody Carter, Robert Wilkins, and myself. And we walked around like every Thursday for maybe 2 or 3 years. And we would dream up all of these things that we could do to support our community. So we said, let's do something. So we called together a group of young executives at the time, and they probably had access to probably $1 billion. We had someone from social service, someone from public health, a syndicated news columnist, a preacher, two people now had foundations. They didn't then, but they were working. It must have been about 10 young executives. And so we got together for probably maybe 2 years or so. And then different ones got jobs, different places, New York, Sacramento. And so we kind of, came apart. Well, not come up, but just people moved in different directions. So I was at youth radio talking about the young execs group. And I said, we ought to have something like this. I said, it's a shame we don't have nothing where we call brothers together. And so So this young man challenged me, said, why don't you do it? You keep talking about it, why don't you do it? So I called together 3 or 4 brothers, and then they called some other brothers, and it kind of morphed into the Brotherhood. Then it became the Brotherhood of Elders. Then it became the Brotherhood of Elders Network. And I guess the impetus initially was, I served the county as a public health director for 13 years. And we decided to do a county health status report. There were 19 indicators, and we did poorly as African people in 16 of the 19. There were 3 that we were okay, but in terms of serious health issues, we were just in trouble. And so it occurred to me to call people together. And so I called them together. There was members of our community, men and women. I said, these are the health status. And then out of that grew, along with the walk, grew the young executives, and then that grew into the Brotherhood of Elders, then the Brotherhood and the Brotherhood of Elders, the Brotherhood of Elders Network. And we've been going this iteration maybe 13, 14 years. So it's a way for us to come together collectively, and we're still growing. We're still morphing, we're still growing. I think some of the older leadership has kind of stepped back and recognizing that it's young people like you that could take it the next step. Because if we some of us are olders and some of us are elders, if we are olders and elders continue, it will die, because I have a typewriter at home. Mm-hmm. And this is where we're at. This is a platform. I thought, so I moved from typewriter to phone to platform. And so I now barely understand that this is a platform to do all kinds of things. So I watch your generation use this in different ways than I do. And I watch moving from reading the newspaper to looking stuff online. The reason I smile, again, I was at youth radio, and I asked these youngsters, I said, well, do any of you read the newspapers? I thought I was making a big point. They said, no, we don't read the newspapers. I said, why don't you read the newspapers? They said, because the knowledge of the newspaper is limited. You have column size. I could go online and I could read the whole story. And if there's column size, then they direct you to what they want you to think about. Mm. And so that's part of the reason why I think it's the next generation, it's a younger generation, have to take it to the next step, and the next step, and the next step for it to grow and for it to be fresh. So we're at a point in our existence where, are we a social club, or are we a race moving forward, collective? And that's kind of, the question that I ask all the time,
What is the impact, or how is the impact of forming as a collective the Brotherhood of Elders Network? How have you seen that play out throughout your life, or maybe the impact in other people's lives? What have you seen from that?
I think it's a place where people know they could go and count on. I think it's created a lot of collegial relationships, friendships. It's allowed the younger generation to talk to some of the older generation, some of the elders, because at 80 years old, I've crossed rivers and streams and bridges that young people haven't seen. And there are ways I could prevent you from walking into the water. If you just wait a minute or two and walk down a little further, there's a bridge that that like cross the water. And then I think, conversely, I think I have learned so much from the younger generation and how you move about the world, how you see the world. I mean, fortunately, I have sons. 3 of my sons are in the media. My youngest son has an organization called Broccoli City. They have the Broccoli Fest in D.C. It's the biggest festival in D.C., so he's in the mix. My next son is in virtual reality. He works for Epic, which is actually a games platform, but they do virtual reality, and this setting, they could, with a flip of a switch, they could put me in a totally different setting.
Right.
Put me in 10 or 20 different settings. You just on site. It's not post-production, it's present production. And then another one is a videographer, and he's traveled the world doing, videography. So I've been blessed to have sons in the media environment. So I've learned a lot from them and through them about the younger generation that if I didn't have access, I just wouldn't know. And I'd be making decisions based upon old, sick, tired ideas. And not at least I could mix my old ideas with some young ideas, and maybe I get close to something that's real and truthful. So, it's just an interesting time.
I hear that. What would be some advice you would give to your younger self?
My younger self would be to have more confidence. I used to stutter real bad, and I had a hard time talking. I couldn't talk about kick your ass, and so I used to fight all the time. And I was just going over some papers, and I was invited or asked to be an officer. I joined the Navy out of high school because I didn't know what to do. So I was qualified for officers candidate school, but I didn't have the confidence at the time to do that because I thought I couldn't do it. I clearly could have done it because there were 6 squads, and there was a company leader. I was the only squad leader that was a squad leader all throughout boot camp. And I should have been company commander, but because I was African, they didn't make me company commander. Had I known that before, and concurrently to that, while in the service, I took speech therapy. And what I learned was, and I still stutter, what I learned was stuttering has little to do with who you are as a person. It's just how you get words out. And so be confident as a person. So I would have told my young self to be confident. You could do this. You've always been able to do it. You could do it. You come from a solid background. You could do it. That's like, one of the things, that I would have said to myself. Be confident, young man, because you have what it takes. Other things I've said to myself as a young man. Gee whiz, I'm trying to think what I've said to myself as a young man. Just be wise. There's not a lot I could think about. That's odd too. But I've had a complete life. I mean, I really have. I've traveled, I've learned, I've raised a family. I've just enjoyed life, so I don't know. That's the one thing that comes to mind, that I don't have regrets, but it would have been interesting had I guess the other thing is, I would tell myself to have pursued medical school, because I was a operating room technician and I was really good, but I didn't have the confidence to move forward. See, I'm not highly educated. I'm pretty smart. You know, a lot of the basics I don't know. The parts of speech, a lot about mathematics I don't know, but I've been able to raise a budget from 55 million to 106 million. So there's a lot of intuition that I operate by, but I don't spell well. I mean, there's a lot of basic education that I just didn't get because I was busy clowning and fighting and wilding, as they say. And so I've been able to get through life with a lot of help and being pretty smart about things, you know. So that was just an interesting question. I'm sure if we talked for a couple hours, I would think about things I'd say, you know, to my young self. But yeah.
Well, on the same token of advice, what wisdom would you share with younger generations? And which you do all the time, I'm sure, the nature of
just be honest. Be you, because everybody else is taken. All you can be is you. You can't be nothing else. And we try. I was walking by some youngsters on Thursday, and they are junior hires. And I didn't have a chance to speak to them because I would have spoken to them. And so they were talking about who smoked weed in the bathroom. Mrs. Montero, a so-called upper middle class Oakland school. Mm-hmm. And so they were, and I could tell just in my passing interaction, some of them didn't want to be in the conversation, but they were because they didn't want to be left out. And I thought about, I wanted to say to them, do you, don't try and do them. And so what I say to young people, be you, be your honest self, because I know when I'm lying to myself. I gotta tell myself a lie in my head before I tell you a lie. Why lie? Why? And so for young people, be your true self. Practice being your true self, because if you practice falseness in your head, you will act in false ways, you know. And so I could go on and on about what, but I mean, that's always sticks out to me. You're blessed to have youth. Take advantage of it. Don't be afraid to try something, to do something. My belief is those people who are successful will always be successful. I don't know that I've ever had a failure. I've had lessons, you know, that I've either learned from those lessons or I've been stupid. And so I don't deal with the concept of failure. I just deal with the concept of I either got it done or I didn't get it done. I either learned a lesson or I didn't, learn a lesson. If I know that the stove burns, I touch the stove, it burns. I touch it, it burns. I touch it, it burns. Well, that's not a failure that to like understand the stove burns. That's just plain stupidity. Mm-hmm. You know, I should know it's going to burn. And so anyway, it's just I just want our young people to be confident, not be boastful, not be back-patting, but to be confident about who you are, feel good about yourself, because what you think is who you are. And if you have a bunch of negative thoughts, then that's how you respond. If you feel insecure, you feel like you have to prove yourself, then that's how you respond. And if I try and prove myself to you, then I'm not my authentic self. I shouldn't have to prove shit to you. You know, you either accept me for who I am or you don't. You know, I can't make you accept me. So I just want young people to not get caught up in the crowd, because the crowd is not always for you. But I do encourage young people to be a part of a collective. No man is an island. No man stands alone. Each man's joy is joy to me. Each man's grief is my own. We need one another. So I shall defend each man as my brother and each man as my friend. Mm-hmm. And so it's not about me. It's about us. It's not about the I, it's about the we. And if we're successful, then I'm successful. If I see myself by myself as being all it, then who do I have to fall on? Who do I have to help? It was like all about me. You have nobody. Then you're isolated. You become an island. You stand alone. So anyway, don't stand alone.
Don't stand alone.
Be about something.
I hear that. Well, Bob Arnold, thank you so much for your time, your advice, your wisdom. If there's anything else you'd like to impart with us before we end, please feel free.
Well, I'm just proud of you two brothers. You know, the fact that you're doing this, and I've spent a lot of my life taking photographs. I have thousands going back to the Panther days, so I know having an eye. I know when you walk around, you always have an eye. You're always composing situations. It was just, that's how I see the world. And I love it. I just so, and then you being in the media, he or she who controls the media controls the minds. Yeah. So it's important that you get out really good stuff. So I just appreciate you, and I love my brother. That's a man. That's an elder. I almost get teary. That's a father. And he knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He will stand by your side. So I'm just proud to have been invited to do this. I think that a lot of us are from other places, from Florida, from Michigan, from New York, and we as African people, I think rootedness is built into us. Mm-hmm. I think we want to be rooted, and I think the Brotherhood of Elders allows men to come in and to be a part of something. There's this thirst, I think, that we have to be a part of something, that is greater than we are. And I think the Brotherhood provides that opportunity, is to be our best self and to be greater than who we are, and to also be able to count on people. I could count on Brother Cole. And there are other brothers in there I could count on. If I need counsel, I could get counsel. If I need financial resources, I could get financial resources. If I need spiritual uplifting, I could get spiritual uplifting. And so, I think anytime 30 to 60 African men come together, I think it's powerful. I think it's just really, really powerful, and it's a form, it's a vehicle, it embodies who we are as African people. We're in the communities that I've spent time in Zimbabwe, I get a cow. I get a bull. You get a female cow. They produce. Then I give my brother or cousin or member of my community a cow. And then my cow produces again. I give someone else a cow. Their cow produces. And so we share. It's there's one community in Mutoka that I will go to. They had all these goats. And I couldn't tell one goat from the next. But someone might have 20 goats, and they know they're 20 goats because how those goats looked. I mean, there was a spot on them or something on them that like, you know, they knew. But every day all the goats came out and ate together. And so I think that as we come together, we know each other much more. We know what we can depend upon, how we could depend upon people. And it's just someone has your back. I mean, you know, you got a group of people that got your back, that are moving in a similar direction, that influences you, and you can influence them. So those are, I love the Brotherhood. We've had our ups and downs, but I just love the fact that we're able to come together as a people and grow and learn. And so, yeah, the joy and pain, sunshine and rain, you know. And for me, the Brotherhood is joy and pain, sunshine and rain. It's joy because we come together. It's pain because we're able to share pain. It's sunshine because we provide light for each other. And sometimes it's rain, you know, during our bad times. But it's the joy and the sunshine that keeps us going. And it covers the rain and the pain. So, yeah.
Thank you, Bob Arnold. You know, really, we really appreciate what you've done, not just for Brotherhood of Elders Network, but as a community at large, and being able to bring people together from so many different walks of life is always a powerful experience. And just the fact that it's been replicated now and continues just speaks to the level of love and understanding that comes along with it. So, you know, very inspired always to hear you speak. So
Thank you. It's what we've done, and I've been blessed to be a part of it. I mean, that's the way I view it. I'm one piece of the puzzle, you know, and we got 3 other pieces here today. So, just thank you for the opportunity to, you know, put out some of my thoughts. Hope you're able to put them together in some coherent fashion.
Very coherent already. Thank you so much.